Okay, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we're going to go over today, we're going to go over VWAP, some uses for it, what it is, how it compares to some other indicators. So VWAP, it stands for Volume Weighted Average Price. It's one of the most popular indicators out there, very widely used, very respected. A lot of the smart money, the bigger institutions, they look at VWAP as kind of an area where it's a fair price, right? So they tend to focus their trading around VWAP as well. It's an intraday indicator, so you only want to use it on your intraday charts. You don't want to use it on the daily chart or weekly chart or anything like that. You want to use it on just your intraday time frames. And it's a lagging indicator, of course. It's not a future predicting indicator. And I'm going to show you guys real quick how to set it up, at least on Thinkorswim. A couple different ways you can get to your studies. You can click here to get to your studies. You can go here, studies, and then go to studies, quick study, all studies. Go to your V for VWAP, and then click on VWAP. You can also do it if you're not familiar with it. You can right click or command click if you have a Mac just on your chart, and it pops up this little pop-up here. You go to studies, quick study, all studies, to V, and gets VWAP there. And then once you get VWAP on your chart, you want to get rid of those upper and lower bands. So you just want to edit your study. You can do that by going here as well. Then you click the edit button or the settings button, and then get rid of those upper and lower bands. Some people use them. I don't use them. I'm only focused on the actual the middle band, which is the one that's calculated correctly. And then I typically what I do with mine is I make it a dotted line. But totally up to you how you want to do it. But that's typically, not typically, that is how my VWAP looks on my charts. It's that color, dotted, and I don't have the upper and lower band. So that's how you set it up on your chart. And you can, change the color, whatever you want, make it however it sticks out to you, because it is an important indicator. So how is it calculated? So VWAP basically is you take the price times the volume and then divide it by the volume, right? Or you take the price times the shares traded divided by shares traded. Volume, same thing. So that's how it's calculated. It's different than a moving average. If you look at moving averages, they'll change from chart to chart, right? If you look at a 5-minute chart versus an hourly chart, your moving averages will be different levels. Well, no matter what chart you look at, no matter what intraday chart that you look at, VWAP will be the same. It's always going to be the exact same price, because it's the way it's calculated. The different intraday time frames, they don't affect the calculation. So it's always going to be the same on whatever intraday chart. And so, how else it's different than the moving average is that it's weighted on volume, right? So it not only shows trend like the moving average can show, but it also kind of shows volatility as well, right? You can look at the trend of VWAP, and also shows, the volatility of the stock, how it's trading. And a lot of traders will consider that, they'll have a little rule to themselves, and they'll say that, hey, anytime we're trading below VWAP, then I'm not going to take any long trades. I consider that bearish. So if we're trading below VWAP, I'm only going to, short if an opportunity presents itself. I don't think that way. I will take trades below VWAP, especially if we're looking at, maybe a bounce off of a support area. And then, of course, when we're coming back up to VWAP, I'm going to be cautious at that VWAP level, because VWAP certainly can act as a resistance level. So, but like I said, some people believe in that, and they won't take a long trade below VWAP, but I certainly will if the setup is good. That's totally up to you guys. VWAP is commonly used by shorts, not just longs, like we just talked about. They'll look for entry signals, they'll look for multiple rejections of VWAP. You know, like we came up here at this level here and got rejected. And we had all these rejections here, and they'll look, you know, for short opportunities, you know, after multiple rejections of VWAP. So, you know, longs and shorts use it. Some traders also, you know, long traders, they like to use it. We're talking about shorts here, sort of, but going long, because what they're looking at is a lot of traders like to use it as a power hour play, right? So let's say that we're getting into power hour and we're trading, we're consolidating below VWAP, right? Well, that's going to be kind of an attraction for shorts, right? So there, you know, it's, you know, consolidating below VWAP, and so because it's below VWAP and consolidating, these shorts think that the next move is going to be a down move. You know, they think that after they're consolidating here, that, you know, it's gonna break down below. So long traders will take advantage of that. So while this stock is consolidating below VWAP here, long traders will get in power hour and bust it up through VWAP, and obviously that, you know, as your shorts starting to, you know, hit their stop losses, you know, wherever it is above VWAP. So a lot of people use it as a power hour play as well. Those are just things to look for when you see consolidation either above or below VWAP. So you know, just basically by doing that, it just creates a, you know, a small short squeeze effect, you know, during power hour. Another thing to look for around VWAP is smart money stop loss rates. It's something to really keep in mind. Let me see if I can find an example that I can show you guys. A good example here. I'm not going to spend too much time looking for it, but basically what you're looking for is you're looking for a lot of choppy action right around VWAP. And a lot of times that is a good indication of, that's a pretty good indication here, of stop loss rates here. You know, it's not perfect, but basically it's going to look kind of like this, going to look a little choppy right around that VWAP level. And that's just your smart money people just, you know, doing stop loss rate. So that's something to keep an eye out for. You know, and why are they doing that around that VWAP level? Because they know that VWAP is a, you know, very popular, heavily used and respected indicator. So they know a lot of traders are taking trades right around that VWAP, whether it be long or short, right? And so that smart money, you know, they'll move that price up and down above and below VWAP just to grab all those long and short stop losses. Not cool, but something that does happen. So keep that in mind, you know, when you're trading. That can certainly happen to you. And that's another reason that, you know, we're looking for. We're not just looking to take a trade just because it broke through VWAP or just because it broke below VWAP. We're also looking at other indications, right? We want to look at the corresponding volume. So if you look at this VWAP break right here and look at the corresponding volume on it, you know, we came back down, we broke below VWAP, sold off down here, and then we broke back through VWAP. So a lot of traders, like we talked about a million times in these sessions, will take an aggressive trade, which in my opinion, an aggressive VWAP trade would be you take the trade prior to waiting for a confirmation candle. And you still would have got burned here, even if you waited to confirmation candle. But if you look at the corresponding volume, there's not a lot of energy in that move, right? Look at the corresponding volume. I don't know if y'all can see that line. I think you can, that line going all the way down to that corresponding volume stick down there versus the corresponding volume on these sticks. You know, these big, lots of energy in these moves, right? Not much energy in that move there. So that's something to keep in mind. This is a little bit tricky here because we did see a nice, you see this long wick here, we did see a nice buy up right there. So price came down to here, got rejected, and then got pushed all the way back up here, and then ended up breaking VWAP. It actually broke this 1405 support level here, or resistance level here as well. So that trade would have looked pretty darn exciting, right? It had a couple of good indications there, but again, if you look at that corresponding volume there, it wasn't that energetic. And even on that second candle, look at the volume actually even dropped. So that's how you're going to look at these different indications. And you know, you guys know me, volume is my biggest indicator. I'm a huge fan of volume. And so if you had looked at the volume here, you would not have gotten faked out on this move right here. So moving on, we're if talking about using different indications with VWAP trades. Other things that we want to look at is we want to look at, did it break not only did it break VWAP, but did it break a previous swing high, here or here? Did it break a resistance level, like right here? Are there other moving averages, here? Is your 50 there, your 9, or whatever else? Just look for other indications that can help you take the trade off of a VWAP trade instead of just VWAP on its own. But with that said, there are traders out there that they trade. You can take just about any of these sessions that we're going over, and there are traders that trade just solely off of that. There are traders that trade just solely off of VWAP and volume, VWAP and price action. I don't do that. I like to have more indications to let me know that, that looks good, looks like a good trade. So certainly keep that in mind. Are we breaking a resistance level? Are we breaking, not only VWAP, but we're breaking a certain EMA, or there's a particular zone there that has previously been bought up. Maybe it's not a specific resistance level right there, but maybe it's this entire zone here, where it's been getting bought up, or a zone here where it got bought up. Look for those other indications and don't just rely on VWAP. Obviously, you want to look at your corresponding volume, like I said. Okay, and as we saw right here, just because we had a confirmation candle break doesn't necessarily mean that this thing's going to continue on up. So that's why you want to take a look at that corresponding volume, just to give you confirmation that that's what's going on. Look at the energy in the move always. Okay, so excuse me there. So we talked about looking for, and this is the kind of choppy stuff. So let's say that VWAP was here, was like right here. This is the kind of choppy stuff that that you want to look at to identify some SL rates. It's popping up and above, up and above, up and above. Could it be consolidation? Yeah, it certainly could be. But also, the choppier it is, the more likely that it's a stop loss rate. I really couldn't find a perfect example. I could look around and find one, but it'd probably take too long. So also keep in mind that just like we talked about with moving averages, that they can act as especially like the 9 and the 20 EMA on shorter time frames, they can act as a magnet. Well, so can VWAP. This is where smart money and the big, people with the big money are thinking that this particular stock is at a fair price, at that level. So that can act kind of as a magnet. And once again, I know we've talked about it before, I'll mention it again. We're not the ones moving these stocks. We are not the ones that these retail traders didn't make this stock do this. No way. Well, we don't have enough buying power to do that. It's all done off of big money. Basically, where the stock goes is where they want it to go, okay? Or the majority of them want it to go. We just have, we're just along for the ride, right? If anybody thinks that, retail traders are the ones that are bumping this move up here, I got some news for you. That's not the case. So, and because this is so respected, and big money thinks that this is the kind of the fair price for the stock. Once we get above VWAP, a lot of times you'll see that it acts as a magnet and brings it right back down to it. Okay. So based on that, a lot of traders, totally up to you, they wouldn't take trades. They would consider this trade here to be extended, right? If let's say this candle right here, this green candle, or maybe even this one. If you were looking at that, and you say, hey man, we got a big pullback here, and now we gapped up here a little bit, and we have this nice green candle, so they're going to hop in on that trade. Well, look how far you are off of the VWAP there. So that would be considered, extended, right? So some traders have that rule. They say, hey, if we're extended off of the VWAP, just like some traders have that rule, if they're extended off of the EMA, the non-EMA, or the 20 EMA, they're not going to take the trade because, again, that VWAP does act as a magnet. So it's going to, it can come right back down here and pull right back to it, which it did right there. So keep that in mind, just like with MAs, it can act as a magnet. So totally up to you how aggressive you want to be, how far you want to take a trade extended off of VWAP. Okay, so let's see. So we can look for other things that we can look for to trade off of VWAP is like we talked about just a minute ago. Whenever you have a stock that is consolidating, right? What happens after consolidation a lot of times? So let's see if I can find an example here. Well, here's a pretty good example right here. So this stock was consolidating right here, right? So what does that mean? That means that buyers and sellers, and it's consolidating right there at VWAP, buyers and sellers are kind of in agreement that, yeah, this is where the price needs to be. And keeping in mind, that's not typically not retail traders agreeing on that's where it needs to be, but that's more smart money, big money agreeing that, yeah, that's where the price needs to be right now. Well, at some point after this consolidation, oftentimes you'll see either a bigger move down or a bigger move up, right? And that's what happened in this case. We saw a pretty darn big move down. This was a huge knife right here after that consolidation. So one thing that I want to point out that's very important is whenever you're looking at that consolidation, look at what VWAP is doing. VWAP is flat, right? If VWAP were going down here and it was consolidating, what would that tell us? That would tell us that if VWAP is going down, that more, but the stock was trading sideways, then more than likely what's happening there is that smart money is leveraging their position and getting ready for a move down. So even though the stock is trading sideways, if you didn't have VWAP on here, you wouldn't see that the volume weighted average price, was getting accumulated on the way down, basically. They're leveraging down. So the same thing on the way up. So if you have a stock that is accumulating, but VWAP was kind of moving up, then that's going to give us an indication that smart money and possibly retail traders as well are leveraging their position for the next move up. So that's very important to keep an eye on. Here, that wasn't the case. Here, VWAP stayed exactly flat, pretty much. Let me see if I can find an example of that real quick. It may be difficult to find, but I maybe can find one here. That's a very important thing to keep in mind. Okay, here's a good example right here. Okay, so we are consolidating here, right? Let me draw. So, I don't want to do that. So here. Yeah, we'll just draw this here. Draw a little trend line here. We're kind of consolidating in this area, right? But look at VWAP. What's it doing? VWAP is actually trending down, right? Even though we're consolidating, it's trending down. And look at what happened after that. Boom, right? Let me see if I can find an example of where it did the opposite. Which are a little bit harder to find. But maybe we'll get lucky so I can show you guys. Flat there. Okay, here's a decent example. I would like to find a better example, but okay, here's a better example here. So let's look at this example here. So basically we are trending sideways here, right? I know this is pre-market, but we're kind of trending sideways here. But what's VWAP doing? VWAP is uptrending a little bit, right? And then what happened after that? Boom. Make sense? See that? Okay, let me look at this other one. Not as good as an example there, but basically, that I think you guys get the gist of it. So when you see a stock that's consolidating or trading sideways, then and you want to take a look at what VWAP is doing, because it can be very indicative on what the next move coming up is going to be. If it's consolidating sideways, but VWAP is actually trending up, likelihood your next move is going to be up. Not always, but that's the indication. Same thing goes with if it's trending, if you're trading sideways, but VWAP is trending down, the likelihood of the next move incoming is going to be down. Very important to keep an eye on. You know, it's kind of nice to know those things, right? You know, it can be a little bit future predicting there. You can see it a little bit here. You can see it a little bit here. These aren't perfect examples, but we did go sideways here, right? But look at what VWAP was doing there. It was actually trending up, right? So keep that in mind. Very, very important. Okay, so let's talk about a pullback to VWAP after a move up, right? So let's say that, let's take this particular example here. So we had this move up, right? Broke through VWAP. We moved up here. We hit a high there, and then we came back down and bounced off of VWAP. Actually, that's a bad example because that did not work out. Let's find another one where it worked out. Sorry guys, when I'm doing these sessions, I'm looking at. I don't take a look at these stocks before. I like for them to be a surprise. I don't want it to look like it's all pre-done, you know. Okay, here's a better example. All right, so let's take this example here. So we had this big move up, right? Big move up here, and then we pulled back to VWAP, right? And then we started seeing some bounces happen here off of VWAP, broke down below VWAP a little bit, and then we saw this bounce back up here. Okay, so once we saw that bounce back up here, we pulled back again, had another bounce back up, back then another bounce back up. You can see how, you know, keep in mind the VWAP again, you know, it's just an area. You know, it's don't think of it as an exact, you know, it has to bounce right at VWAP. It's just an area, okay? You know, doesn't necessarily mean that just because we broke and closed below VWAP that it's just going to still continue on down. So make sure and keep that in mind. So what we're looking for, my point is, on these pullbacks, what are we looking for as confirmation? So let's look at this first pullback that actually, this first bounce that actually didn't work out. Let's look at our corresponding volume on that. Look at the corresponding volume. I didn't even look at it before. It's just there's just nothing there, right? There's not a lot of corresponding volume there. So there's not a lot of energy in that move. So more than likely, as long as you're paying attention to your different indications, particularly volume, you would not have taken that VWAP bounce, right? So let's look at the next one. Same thing here. There's not a lot of corresponding volume with that particular, on that particular candle, breaking through VWAP. And then next door, look, how much energy is in that move, volume-wise? Not a ton, right? And we see that with VWAP staying flat here. See how VWAP's flat? Okay, now let's look at the next one, the next green candle off of VWAP. So we came back down here and got bought back up. So it broke below VWAP a little bit, got bought back up, and then we did gap down a little bit here. Okay, see the gap down there? From where that candle closed, which was right there, versus where we opened, which was here. So, but look at that corresponding volume compared to the other volume. See? Versus, let me draw here. So that corresponding volume is here. Wrong way. Is there. Versus the corresponding volume here and here. A lot more energy in that move, right? And, you're probably saying, well, Doc, we're not going to know that it was going to be that big of a volume stick until it's finished. Well, yeah, you will, because if you're watching the stock, you see how quickly that volume candle is building, right? The volume candle here, so maybe 15 or 20 seconds into that candle, it was a lot higher than it was 15 or 20 seconds into these other volume sticks. Make sense? So as long as you're watching the stock, you'll be able to identify that, yeah, this volume candle is going to end up being much bigger than our previous ones, right? And we also had another telltale sign here. Let's look at this volume candle. Let's look at the corresponding candle on it. So whenever we tried to sell off here, off of that initial bounce, look at the volume on there, the sell volume. It wasn't very heavy, so there wasn't a lot of energy to the downside. Sellers weren't as serious as buyers were on this candle. So just wanted to point that out, that when you're looking at that corresponding volume, it can really, really give you a heads up of what's going on, what's actually taking place, instead of just looking at the candles. Because if you're just looking at the candles, then yeah, you're going to hop in right here. I mean, the trade would have eventually worked out for you anyway, but there are a lot of times that, like that previous example that I showed, where it didn't work out for you. So always take a look at that corresponding volume when you're looking at VWAP. Okay, so we talked about some of those traders that don't take trades they don't take long trades when it's below VWAP. I will do that as long as the setup is good. But what am I looking for? Let me see if I can find an example here. Okay, here's an example. I know this is right after open, so it's kind of crazy after the open, but we had this. It opened up, popped way up here to the 1641, and then sold off. Back to my thing here. So from here to here, it sold off, right? Down back below VWAP, okay? And once you start seeing this bounce happen, what are we looking for? Well, again, we're looking for corresponding volume, right? Not a lot of corresponding volume in that move. Not a lot of sell energy in that move, right? So, hey, we can be possibly looking for a bounce here, maybe back up to VWAP. So you start looking at the corresponding volume, starts getting heavier and heavier. So if you ended up taking a trade down here somewhere, or even here, or here, wherever you wanted to take the trade on that big candle with that corresponding volume, where's our first place that we're looking to get out of the trade possibly? Well, probably VWAP, because that's going to be our next resistance level. In this case, it kind of resisted up here at that 1549 resistance level that we had drawn, but you can take a look at both of them, right? Those are both areas to focus on. But look at what VWAP's doing that entire time, even though this stock, even though these candles are moving up. What's VWAP doing? It's trending down. So make sure and keep that in mind, and keep that, you want to watch don't just look at where VWAP is. Okay, well, hey, there's VWAP. Look at where it's trending. Is it trending down or is it trending up? What's it doing? That's going to give you an indication as to where that price could possibly be moving next. That makes sense? So once we came up here, I can tell you probably why this got such a big, nasty red candle here is because not only were we not holding VWAP, we also had another resistance level right here. So that was a really very attractive trade for shorts, and likely why we saw this big knife here. So keep that in mind there. So let's look at a couple of different examples of where we could take some trades off of VWAP. Let me see if I can find some good examples here. This thing just wasn't trading above VWAP very well, was it? Here we go. Here's some. Okay, so here's a good example of what I was talking about before, how we are consolidating below VWAP, right? Consolidating below VWAP. These lines aren't going to be perfectly straight because I'm drawing them kind of fast. Just wanted to get them on there. Okay, so we're consolidating below VWAP in this area right here, right? So, we had our trend lines drawn. we're watching the stock. For whatever reason, we're watching AHPI today. It had some news, or it had a nice run earlier. This run here came up, so hey, yeah, we're watching this thing because it's had some movement, right? And after it ran up, it kind of consolidated in this area. We didn't sell off yet, so we're still watching it. So we drawn our trend lines like we're supposed to do. So we're trending in this area. So what are we waiting for after a consolidation like this? We're waiting for a move like this or a move like that, right? Typically, that's what you're going to see, once that particular trend is over. So once it broke this trend line, let's look at our corresponding volume, what it did just prior to that. So not much volume there, not much volume there. Now volume's starting to build, right? Starting to build. And then once that volume starts to build, then that's when we start looking at, okay, this is starting to look interesting, right? Volume is building. We're breaking above VWAP. We have a nice big fat green candle here. And then we have a really nice volume stick there. So we're looking at where this volume is starting to build up, right? Build up right here. So this would be a good example of a trade that you could take off of VWAP. One thing that I don't like, and again, this is totally up to the individual trader, I don't like to take VWAP trades when the break is such a huge candle like this. I don't like those, because what oftentimes happens is after a big candle like that, because you had a big move already. You had enough to take some profits here. What was that, like a 30-cent profit or something like that? So for these scalpers, that's a big enough move for them. So maybe they're hopping out up here, right? Wherever. So I like to see smaller moves on a break of VWAP. So maybe the candle started here, came up here, and it broke VWAP there, and now I'm waiting for confirmation candle. Now we have a confirmation candle like this. Those are the VWAP trades that I like better than I do these big long ones. Totally up to you how aggressive you want to be. I will take these VWAP trades if the volume is strong enough. These ones without waiting for confirmation candle, I have done that. Sometimes there's just enough energy in the move that will override the need to wait for a confirmation candle. But just keep in mind, oftentimes when you have those big green candles on the break of VWAP, a lot of times this won't happen here. A lot of times you'll see some sell-off right after that, because you've got some people taking profits off of that big move. So keep that in mind. And again, totally up to you how you want to play that. Once again, I like taking the ones that are the smaller ones, unless there's a huge energy in that move. That part's totally up to you. Okay, let's look at a couple of more here. Get rid of these trend lines. But this is, like I said, that's a great example of a move after consolidation below VWAP. And if we did take a trade down here for whatever reason, let's say we took it because it broke this 950 resistance level. I don't want to do that. I don't know why I always seem to do that. Kind of lost where I was. But anyway, let's say that we broke that 950 resistance level here, right? So we took the trade based on that. Based on, okay, hey, it came up here and it broke this 950 previous resistance level. So now we're trading above that. So keep in mind, you're going to want to start taking a look at, maybe you might be looking to get out at VWAP, if it didn't break down at VWAP. Then you could stay in the trade if it didn't break down. You just look at the energy in the move with your corresponding volume will let you know what's likely to happen once you do break VWAP. Okay. That's other than going over a few more examples, let's do that real quick. See if we have some more examples back this way. Trading pretty choppy there. Not a good day there. Let's look at this move here where we broke VWAP. Okay, let's take a look at this move here. Well, let's see. All right, so we have this move here going up, and we couldn't break VWAP there. Then we finally did break VWAP on a little bit of volume. To me, that's not enough volume. So let's look at this next candle. Very telling next candle, right? If you look at the corresponding volume, you got a hammer candle here, basically. Almost a hammer candle. I'd like to see it a little bit more of a body there, but if you look at the corresponding volume there, is there a lot of energy in that sell move? Well, no, not at all. And basically what happened is this came back down here to VWAP and got bought right back up. And then you start looking at, okay, now what's the volume doing? After this weak sell candle here, what's the volume doing? Ticking up, right? So this would be a good example of a trade that you might be interested in, right, at that VWAP level, because once we had that break, this is basically your confirmation candle. Even though it's a red candle, that is your confirmation candle that you did break. You not only broke, but you actually went back to VWAP and held support there. So once you look at your next candle, now that's when you start to see that your volume's coming in. Whether you want to look at it at this level on this candle here or that candle there. If you look at the corresponding volume on both of them, the corresponding volume is actually better, right, versus what the sell move was. Make sense? So then we started having a little bit of trouble here with the corresponding volume, because I think here it looks like maybe traders got a little bit worried because the price came all the way back down here, but it did get bought up. So our volume was a little bit sketchy there, simply because we had this down move right out of the gate before it got bought up. Then after that, if you look at the volume again, lots of volume started coming back in again. So if you just match this up with volume, then that's going to increase the likelihood of the trade going in your favor. Taking a trade up here, is it risky? Absolutely. Why is it risky? Well, because you're really extended off of VWAP. Make sense? But again, if you look at the corresponding volume on that candle, it's much better than the recent volume. It's higher relative to the recent volume. So just keep that in mind. My whole point to this is just to keep in mind matching up that corresponding volume with each particular candle. And we could go through several more of these, and talk about it, but I think you guys probably have the gist of it by now. So mainly what we're looking for is breaking of VWAP. We're looking for confirmation candles. We're looking for the trend of what VWAP is doing. Is it trending up? Is it trending down? And we're looking at, of course, any other indications on our chart, including volume, resistance levels, support levels, whatever else. So make sure and match it up. Don't just look at VWAP, and every single time that a stock breaks VWAP that you take a trade thinking that it's going to rally. Sometimes it may, but doesn't always mean that that's what's going to happen just because it broke VWAP. Okay, so I told you guys this would be probably a pretty short session today because VWAP is not really there's just not a lot to go over with VWAP. It's pretty straightforward. And I've been trying to squeeze VWAP in with other sessions, and I haven't been able to do that over the past 2 or 3 weeks. So I thought I would do a session just on VWAP, which is why we did this one today. So do we have any questions? I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here since we have questions, possibly.